Hey there. Today we're going to get into something that's really personal for a lot of us, the journey of healing from the wounds of our past. We're going to explore how we can understand the stories that have shaped who we are and, more importantly, how we can start to reclaim that narrative for ourselves. Just listen to those words. They were shared in a Psychology Today article, spoken from a parent to a child. Words like these, they're not just sounds that disappear into the air. For a kid, they can land with the force of a physical blow. And this, right here, is so often where the story of a wounded inner child really begins.
You see, it doesn't matter if the abuse was verbal or physical. Those hateful words, they don't just fade away. We can't just ignore them or forget them. They actually get embedded in our minds, becoming these sort of secret bruises that we carry with us. And they ache every time we feel criticized or whenever we disappoint ourselves, shaping how we see ourselves for years and years.
Now, to really get a handle on these wounds, it helps to understand how experts talk about trauma. They make this distinction between big T trauma, things like serious abuse, life-threatening events, war, and little t trauma. Now, little t trauma might be painful events that, weren't life-threatening, but they still have this massive impact on us. They can completely change how we see the world. And here's the most important part. Both are valid. Both leave lasting effects, and both deserve to be seen and healed.
So this brings us to what is maybe the biggest turning point in the whole healing process. It's an incredibly simple phrase, but it has so much power. You might even recognize it from that famous scene in the movie, Good Will Hunting. It's not your fault. In that scene, Robin Williams' character just keeps saying it over and over until it finally breaks through. And honestly, this is often the very first, and sometimes the hardest, truth that we need to really let sink in on our own path to healing. It is the foundation for absolutely everything that comes after. So that leads to a pretty big question, right? If what happened to us really wasn't our fault, why is it so common to carry this massive weight of blame and shame with us long into our adult lives? Well, the answer actually goes back to the survival instincts of a child.
Think about it. When we're kids, we rely on our parents for literally everything. Our survival depends on them. So the idea that they might be flawed or hurtful or unsafe, that is just too threatening for a child's mind to handle. So as a defense mechanism, it's just safer to blame ourselves. We take all that pain inside and we start to believe that we're the ones who are defective, that we must somehow deserve it. And that's how that harsh, critical inner voice gets born.
The real healing, the real shift, it begins the moment we can finally separate ourselves from that critical voice. It starts when we can look back at that little kid who's still inside us and tell them with real compassion, with real conviction, you deserved so much better. That is the absolute game changer, moving from blaming yourself to showing yourself compassion. Okay, but understanding the past is one thing. What about dealing with those overwhelming feelings that can just wash over you in the present moment? That's a whole different challenge. And for that, we need an anchor, something to hold on to when the storm hits. When that wave of anxiety hits and your mind starts spiraling, there is a really simple but incredibly powerful technique you can use to pull yourself right back to the here and now. It's called the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding method. Let's just walk through this really quick. First, you just calmly name 5 things you can see. A lamp, a book, a speck of dust on the floor, anything. Then 4 things you can physically feel. Your shirt on your skin, the chair beneath you. Next, 3 things you can hear, maybe a fan humming or cars outside. Then 2 things you can smell. And finally, 1 thing you can taste, even if it's just the inside of your own mouth. By using all your senses, you're basically forcing your brain to get out of that abstract spiral of worry and planting it right back into the reality of the present moment. So once we have a tool like that to manage the storms, we can start the actual work of rebuilding. And this isn't about trying to erase the past. It's about consciously, intentionally building a new future. So the question is, where do we even begin?
Well, the first place to start is internal. Before we can change anything in the outside world, we have to work on the environment inside our own heads. It's all about taming that mental chaos that trauma can leave behind.
So what does that look like in practice? First, you've got to give yourself time and permission to feel whatever it is you're feeling, without judging yourself for it. Healing is messy. It's definitely not a straight line. Second, think about trying meditation. It is an amazing tool for just quieting that nonstop loop of worry in your head. And third, journaling. It gives you a totally private, safe space to untangle your thoughts, to vent, or even to start planning your next move. All right, so with a mind that's a little bit calmer, we can then turn our focus outward. This next phase is all about action. It's about breaking that feeling of being stuck and starting to re-engage with life, but this time on your own terms. And listen, the key here is to start small. I mean, really small. Just get off the couch, go for a short walk, do one simple thing to break the inertia. Then from there, maybe you can start to reconnect, call up an old friend, or find new people with tools like Meetup. And seriously, don't underestimate the power of decluttering. Cleaning out the physical chaos around you can be such a powerful symbolic act. It's like you're literally making space for something new to come in.
And you have to remember this. Celebrate every single small victory. Every walk you take, every friend you call, every time you sit down to write in your journal. These aren't just little actions. They are the actual building blocks you are using to construct a new life and a new you. You know, when it really comes down to it, this whole journey is about what Brené Brown calls a reclaiming. Trauma, it makes us build walls. It steals our willingness to be vulnerable, because being vulnerable suddenly feels way too dangerous. So healing, then, is really the process of reclaiming the courage to show up, to let yourself be seen, and to just be authentically you again.
So, as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with a question to just mull over. After everything we've talked about, from understanding the wound to finding tools to rebuild, what's the first small, manageable step you will take, starting today, to begin reclaiming your own story?